Return of the Living Dead. 80s horror in a nutshell. Glam, gore, corny lines, slapstick comedy, and of course someone has to get naked at some point. This little piece of cinema was released in 1985 and directed by Dan O'Bannon, and it's gotta be one of the greatest zombie movies to ever grace the silver screen. Currently sits in my top 5. If you haven't seen it, give it a watch. It follows most of the tropes that you find in zombie movies, but with a few twists along the way to separate itself from the herd and take you on a delightful rollercoaster of 80s film. The movie starts off with a young punk rocker, Freddy, played by Tom Matthews. This kid really dials up the 80s cliches to 11. He's starting a new job at a medical supply warehouse and has been given a tour of the facilities by his supervisor, Frank, played by James Karen. Once his tour's over, the men are sitting in their office and Freddy asks Frank, "What's the weirdest thing you ever saw in here?" Quote, directly saw in her. We get told that the events from Night of the Living Dead, yes, the original Romero film, were actually a result of a chemical spill in a hospital that leaked down into a morgue and reanimated the dead. We just happened to be in that exact warehouse that the army shipped all those contaminated dirt and dead bodies to. Frank decides he wants to flex his big old dick for Freddy and show him the old containers they still store in the basement. He takes him down to the basement and they have a look at the containers. What I can only call a Three Stooges blunder, Frank slaps the side of the tank like he's selling a used fucking car. And of course this grade A engineered tube blows a fucking gasket, spilling all the chemicals around the room and into the vents. This chemical is what brings everything back to life and kicks off the zombie hijinks that follow. But it's not just humans that reanimate, oh no, it's anything that ever had a pulse. So this medical warehouse holding dogs cut in half, butterflies, and even cadavers gets the full visual effects 80s treatment, which to its credit is actually very well done. So I'd like to give a quick shout out to the McCarthy brothers, Robin and Kevin, for their work here. Not that you're ever going to see this, because no one will. The gore and decaying bodies are presented very nicely, with skin peeling off, blood running all over, and jowls falling from their faces. The two men awaken from their stooge blunder and wander upstairs, and we get introduced to some of the reanimated items around the warehouse. In their panic, they end up calling their supervisor Bert to come and help with this whole mess. Freddy's punk rock friends end up cruising over to pick him up from his new job, but as badass as they are, they're nice enough not to interrupt him. So instead they break into a cemetery, so I suppose foreshadow party and be 80s punk rock teens. Back at the warehouse, Frank, Bert, and Freddy have confrontation with a cadaver who stumbles around making all sorts of noise, and they drop a pickaxe into its head, thinking that this same chemical that set off the events of Night of the Living Dead should work here, destroying the brain. But it doesn't do a thing. They eventually cut off the head and every piece of its body in an attempt to kill the corpse, but once that happens, every little piece of its body animates on its own, so attacking the brain isn't the way to go about killing them. They come up with this glorious idea to head over to the morgue and burn the bodies. Only way to do that is strike up a deal with Bert's good friend Ernie. I get it. This dumb name. They didn't get it at the time that Bert and Ernie matched. Anyways, Ernie's played by Don Calfa. Before we get to the morgue though, there's a fun cutscene of pure 80s horror bliss where we get to watch one of the female characters take off her clothes for no fucking apparent reason and dance fully nude on somebody's grave with an obscure song from that era that I'm sure was never heard of again. This mostly just set the stage for having some tits bouncing around for the rest of the movie because she never seems to manage to get her clothes back. Eventually they arrive at the morgue and have a chance to strike up whatever deal they came to with Ernie to burn the bodies. But this only makes things worse. We learn there's no real way to kill these things because of all this does is kick off a rainstorm that spreads the toxins around the cemetery where all the dead bodies come back to life, new or old. At this point, the plot just becomes a story about typical zombie survival. What surprised me the most was the fact that these zombies can talk and run, which I'm not sure has been done before. They're capable of thought and speech as well. This had me laughing a little bit, but was also pretty creepy in its own way. The zombies get on a radio and request more police and more paramedics to come help so they can have more brains to eat. At one point, this half-cut up corpse makes its way into the lab and is strapped down to a medical table. Ernie does some tests on her, but why bother to test when you can just ask the damn corpse what their purpose is? Which turns out they need to eat brains to dull the pain of their rotting bodies. I thought this was actually a fun bit of plot to flesh the zombies out. The zombies don't really have any weaknesses to speak of, and that sets the stage for what I assume is just the end of the world. Going any further and I would spoil this whole thing. They fight for survival, and of course the government gets involved at one point with some crazy hijinks ensuing. While it can be corny at times, and even a bit of a weak script, the actors put a lot of effort into bringing their characters to life. Maybe not everyone though, those punk rockers were kinda useless. Mostly just brains splattering the wall and a set of tits bouncing around for entertainment. But what did you expect? It's 80s campy horror. All in all, this movie is pure entertainment, and I would highly suggest it to any horror zombie film fans to give it a watch. Thanks for watching guys, I'll see you again soon.